G'day, Ian welcomes. So I thought I'd do that. All right, good morning to everybody here. And oh, sorry, bear with me. Trash in the place. Wasn't trying to. It's chilly as well. The sun warmed me up. It's not quite 0 yet, but pretty darn close. I'm gonna have to check my motorcycle battery today. All right, so never any shortage of any craziness going on. Everywhere going on right now. Okay, I guess I'll start on this side. So obviously Syria is right now the big thing, and you got George Soros's white helmets in there. I don't trust them at all. Not necessarily. See, the United Nations, the white helmets, organizations like that. Okay, the people that work within it, most of these people are compartmentalized and don't really understand what the bigger agenda is. With the white helmets, what they are is aid workers, the majority. But what people don't understand is they're political. They are political. These people, okay, they're anti-Assad. They're not going in there. You see this with Doctors Without Borders, like the real Doctors Without Borders. They go into, they don't take sides. If there's an ISIS guy lying on the ground or a Syrian soldier lying on the ground, they'll help both of them. That type of thing. The thing with these white helmets, it is made up of people that help people out. Whatever. That type of thing. So there are good people in there. There's no doubt about that. But the organization is a George Soros-funded organization. So right there, that tells you it is not going to be open, transparent, and honest. Same with the United Nations. The United Nations, there are good people that work in the United Nations, but the United Nations as an organization is corrupt to the core because of who runs it. Again, Rockefeller, Rothschild, Soros, Kissinger, Brzezinski. These guys are all in there. Brzezinski doesn't really run the UN or anything like that, but they're puppeteers that are in there. And you can look at these organizations and anything that comes out of there, you got to take with a grain of salt because it's political, right? So anyway, you've seen this on RT. There's a 10-year-old girl from Yemen, basically, or not Yemen, but in Saudi Arabia, basically. Asking the U.S. to stop selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia, this comes on the heels, of course, of Saudi Arabia just getting $1.15 billion in military aid from the United States. Again, why would we be selling anything to these countries? Any Middle Eastern country, let alone Saudi Arabia, including Israel. Why would we be selling weapons to these areas? It's an unstable area of the world. You don't give them powerful weapons. So I don't know how many new Abrams tanks. I think what's happening is because so many Abrams tanks got blown up by the Houthis, that the U.S. is, I heard something like 130 new units, Abrams tanks going into, they're going to basically give those to the Saudis or sell those to the Saudis and in turn, I guess replenish some of the losses that they've taken. One thing about the Saudi military is I don't know how good they really are, but as a whole, they're not very good. They got phenomenal weaponry, but they don't really, they're not really like a professional army. So they got this weaponry, but they don't have the know-how, so to speak. And that's why you see so much devastation. And the military ranks don't seem to be all that consistent and reliable when it comes to the Saudis. They tend to give up easy. They tend to, they tend to flip-flop a bit. So I could see definitely Saudi Arabia, their troubles are just beginning, really. They are being thrown under the bus. Remember, in 2012, they said they were going to sell oil outside the U.S. dollar by the year 2022, roughly, or to 2025. So, in other words, they pulled a Saddam Hussein and a Muammar Gaddafi. Selling your resources outside the U.S. petrodollar is basically a death sentence. They'll go to war with you almost instantaneously. Saddam Hussein, I think it was 4 days after. So, you know what I mean? So it's like, so if you think there's a free and open, transparent markets out there, that tells you no. But anyway, over there to the UK, yes, we are going to have Will and Kate come to Canada again. I think they're going to be here this week or whatever. I don't mind Will and Kate that much. The problem I have is every time they visit is how much does it cost the taxpayers? Like that stuff we can't afford. Never mind Justin Trudeau's moving expenses for his buddies there. Something like $270,000 to move like 3 people, to Ottawa. That, again, too many liberals are entitled to their entitlements, right? Too many entitlements and stuff like that. And I look at something like this. This is why I think Canada should become way more nationalist. And again, we don't have to get rid of our history. We have a proud history with Great Britain. There's no doubt about that. But we can't really afford the Queen or the monarchy and stuff. We just can't afford that. If they want to come here, more than happy to have them. Just pay your own way. That's what we're saying. You know, like this idea that we're rolling out the red carpet. The red carpet just costs us too much at a time when, remember, Canada spends 400% of GDP. That's what our debt is, 400% of GDP. The United States is like 360. However, the United States still has further to fall. But that said, we simply cannot, we're spending too much, and we're not spending it on the right things. I mean, there's healthcare issues, there's vets homeless vets out there, there's natives without running water. I think Will and Kate can wait, you know what I mean? That type of thing. But anyway, back to the UK. 180 nuclear convoy incidents since 2000. They do this, they move these, remember I covered this before, and I didn't know this, and then a bunch of people from Scotland and stuff like that started telling me, no, this is a normal occurrence, it happens every couple of months. Stuff like that. But again, if you watch some of my older World War III updates, it gives you a running tally of what's going on in the world and why it goes on. But anyway, they do about around 6 trips a year, and they take these warheads from one area to another, and basically they maintain the warheads and then they bring them back, which I don't understand why they don't just do it on site. Why would you have to move these things around? It doesn't make sense to me, but I'm sure there's a reason that they do it. And they cover about 9,000 miles I guess in all 3 trips or whatever, or all 6 trips. So that's, they're moving these things quite far. And there's security issues. I mean, if the convoy is ever attacked, again, it wouldn't take much to steal a warhead, you know what I mean? They've had trucks break down, overheated, they've had all kinds of issues like that. So really, it's a bad setup that they got. There's no reason to be moving warheads around, period. Plus, they're moving through people's neighborhoods. You picture the best, perfect disaster you could get. A truck carrying nuclear warheads gets smashed on a train track, catches fire with, that's carrying benzene. Everything's burning, so you got nuclear benzene, environmental disaster. So again, why are we moving these things around? The worst creation of mankind has got to be nuclear power. I know there are people out there that, that nuclear weapons are not the same as nuclear power. Yes, nuclear power, one of the safest things we got going. But when it goes wrong, it's so devastating. Like, there is no such thing as a minor nuclear incident. That's what we have to keep in mind. And so there's like an anti-nuclear campaign that's been going on. I forget the name of them, but they protest this every time. They're on the route protesting as the trucks drive by, and I think rightfully so. I really do think they got to find a better system. Like, maybe rather than move the warheads from where they are, just keep them where, where they maintain them, or relocate the facility that maintains them. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason why they're doing what they're doing, but it would be good if they could eliminate that risk, especially in this day and age, especially with, the Muslim invasion going on in Europe. There's going to be a jihadi. It's only a matter of time before jihadis say, "There's a nuclear convoy. Let's go get the nukes." They'll set them off right there. They won't go thermonuclear, but if they can light these things on fire, they're burning plutonium and uranium or whatever they'll be burning. That's bad enough. I mean, yes, the warheads are probably moved without their triggers. I would imagine that. But when Xbox 3 or whatever the big Xbox that they use now. Is it Xbox 3? Again, I'm not a gamer, so you guys will tell me. The one that's like super powerful and everything like that. When that came out, they banned the sale of those things to some Middle Eastern countries because they were buying these Xboxes, taking some chips and stuff, and circuit boards out of these Xboxes, and they were actually able to use them as guidance systems for missiles. So that's how powerful these weapons are, right? Or these guidance systems are. There's, I forget which country it was. It might have been Yemen, actually. This is like back in, 2007, 2008. Whenever the Xbox 3 came out, or whatever the new Xbox. Well, I guess now it's like whatever it is. But anyway, yeah. So those were things that were going on. So it's not an impossibility. Okay, you don't have the nuclear trigger, fine. They'll make one. That type of thing. And again, they'll just rewire it. It's like anything. The starter on your truck doesn't work properly, or the solenoid goes. You get the screwdriver and you dead short the solenoid and you start your truck, right, or car or whatever. people will find a way. Never say never. I listened to, thanks for whoever it was that sent me the link there, Bashar al-Assad, talking about the strike, basically on his guys. He says, no, this was carried out for over an hour. There was 2 A-10s and I think 2 F-16s involved, and they were striking, not like he says, it's not like a lone, it's not believable because, like a lone, like say a lone A-10 just accident, and this happened, for example, in Iraq with the Highway of Death, where the A-10s would come in and they'd strafe like, there's a convoy of like 500 vehicles. You ever heard an A-10 come by? Well, you don't hear them go by. You hear them going, but you don't hear them coming. I don't think there's a quieter jet out there. It is so stealthy. I've seen A-10s fly. I've sat in an A-10. It's a pretty cool airplane. I still think it's one of the best attack aircrafts ever made in history. Canada should have at least 500 of them. Yes, you can upgrade the avionics a little bit and maybe the radar, and anti-missile defense on it, that type of thing. But otherwise, it's an analog flying tank with a big-ass gun, 30 millimeter, firing between 15 and 30 rounds a second out of it, 1,800 rounds of depleted uranium. Very devastating. The thing is that these guys, what they figure is the F-16s probably took out the air defense, and which would have probably took out the the Israeli jet, and I still don't know what jet was shot down, and the drone. So the Syrians apparently they shot it down with an S-200 missile system. So the F-16s that came in, plus that's the U.S. ones, I guess. I don't know what the Australians were flying. They probably have F-18s. And I don't know what the rest, because again there was about the Turks were in, everybody was in on this one, so I don't know how this attack apparently went on for an hour. Apparently the Russians and the Syrians did try to call off the attack, didn't work. So this does look like it was a very deliberate attack. Of course, the retaliation was the UN convoy getting hit. If it was a UN convoy, now this one is kind of again a gray area. In Assad's interview. John Kerry's interview, or not interview, but talking about it in the press conference at the meeting over Syria, saying that there were 2 eyewitnesses saying that they saw jets in the air, not drones. There was reported a coalition drone in the area, but whose, nobody knows, for this UN convoy. It's still not 100% sure that it was a UN convoy, but apparently it might have been. It was passing through rebel territory, and of course the eyewitnesses happened to be, you guessed it, the white helmets, George Soros-backed white helmets. So can we believe them? I don't know. I don't think so. That said, would the Russians do this in retaliation? Would the Syrians do this in retaliation? It's a possibility. However, there doesn't seem to be any proof that their guys were in the area. And Assad's he's a dictator, but he was stability in the region. So this whole mess wouldn't be happening had the United States not tried to do regime change in Syria, right? So again, it all comes back to the United States. And their government, and U.S. foreign policy and Israeli foreign policy for the Greater Israel Project. This is a part of it. These are just the details. The details don't matter. So there's that, plus the other thing is, would they do this? Why would they do this? Now, one thing Assad said, he goes, why would, he says the food convoys has been coming in. And he does make a point. Assad does make good points. It doesn't mean he's telling the truth. He makes good points. He goes, we're giving the Syrians medicine on one end, on Aleppo. We're giving them, that. And then you say we're going to bomb hospitals and food convoys. He says, look, and Assad said this before. He goes, you say, okay, well, that we're stopping the food going to the people. He goes, if we could stop the food going to the people, if we could do that, how come we can't stop the weapons going in? You know what I mean? So he says, the food's getting in there. He says, yeah, it's devastating what's going on in there, but he says, he goes, the U.S. has, and the media has no credibility because everything they say is just a lie. There's no facts. They say things, but they don't prove anything. And it's true. We don't really know how bad the Syrians have it. I can imagine they have it pretty bad. It is a war zone and stuff like that. He acknowledged that, of course, it's a war zone. There's going to be suffrage. But he says the food is getting through the same way the weapons are, So we do know ISIS, again, has been basically, basically, captures the food and then extorts it back to the people. They charge them like 5 times the price, whatever. So they're doing that. And we know that the UN keeps putting the food convoys in where the ISIS rebels are. Right, so we know this. So did a mortar shell take out this convoy? I do believe John Kerry is right on that, where no, a mortar isn't going to do that kind of devastation to a convoy. It'll blow things up, but, you know, a mortar, you know, they are kind of limited to the damage they do. They're good for cutting down infantry and stuff like that, maybe blowing up a vehicle if you can get a direct hit, maybe knock over a vehicle or two if they're close, but that kind of devastation, no, it probably was some, or a shitload of mortars, whatever. But if there was aircraft in the air, it's hard to say whose it was. And we still don't even know if it was really, you know, a UN convoy or not. You know, we don't really know yet. So anyway, that's what's going on there. But that incident, you can see the publicizing of it on the CBC here in Canada. They're you know, glorifying the white helmets, of course. You got John McClellan out there, the guy who's all in for the Syrian refugee liberal, talking about, you know, meeting with George Soros and stuff like that. So Canada's about to get a shitload more refugees. Don't kid yourself. So yeah, the Trudeau government is definitely George Soros friendly. Biggest terrorist on the planet. Yes, goof. Leave my feet alone. I'll pet you. I'll pet you. Moving on, people, particularly in California, living in vans. It's becoming a big trend right now. Again, people can't afford houses. They can't afford the rent. They can't afford this. They can't afford that. All that type of stuff. So that's something. Again, if there was an economic recovery, people wouldn't be living in vans. You know, I mean, there's always going to be some, but maybe should I get into this one? No, I'm going to come back to this one. The Russians are testing out 2 missiles, new missiles, the KH-38 missile and the SUP-24 unguided bomb. There's now this comes on the heels of the big airstrike against the Syrian army, which apparently did, yes, the rumors are it killed Russian, Iranian, and Syrian intelligence, as well as Hezbollah intelligence. So basically, this also kind of backs up a very big motive for the United States and the coalition forces to hit this area. So they took out some, like I said, there's probably the spy vs. spy stuff going on of dead, you know, CIA, Mossad, you know, FSB, you know, agents all over the place, dead all over Syria. We're never going to know the full number. Again, this is very spy vs. spy. But they did, that's apparently what was hit. And of course, the ISIS guys were ready to move in right after. They were sitting there waiting. You know, how would they know where, like Assad said himself, how would they know where our troops were? You know, without somebody had to tell the ISIS guys to be ready after the bombing run. Because right after the bombing run, these guys were right in there. They were on the other side of a mountain or whatever, on the other far side of where they got hit, Homs or Aleppo, wherever they got hit there. I forget right now that the cities drawing me a blank. But anyway, the rebels were ready to go as soon as and they took that area back. Now, if this is true, this, again, people have asked me about my previous World War III update, which I think was quite an important one, where the Russians fired 3 caliber missiles from their cruiser from the Caspian Sea and took out basically, where is it here? My writing's so bad I can't even read my own handwriting. Anyway, the 30 officers, intelligence officers, what they hit was, they hit a command post is what they hit. Now, this comes from Sputnik News, one of the Iranian news factions. South Front covered it. When South Front covered it, they said they asked the Russians for a comment, and there was details on the incident, and the response was no comment, which speaks volumes. It wasn't, no, that never happened. No, you know, what are you talking about? No, or it was an accident. No, it was no comment. I'm pretty sure this is 100% legit. If the Russian army is saying, if the Russian government is saying no comment, it means this incident most likely, with 99.9%, happened as a retaliation to their guys getting hit. And this comes this comes on the heels of Russia being prepared now. Force meeting force. Again, the retaliations that Putin has been talking about. If you guys strike, we'll strike. They haven't gone preemptive strike yet, but that had to be a big cost to the U.S. intelligence agency for sure, and to the Mossad. Now, that said, this incident is big, and you know it's really big because the mainstream media is not covering it all. They'll probably cover it in about 2 weeks' time if things die down a bit. Right now, it's barrel bombs and stuff as usual. And Assad says best: a bomb is a bomb. He goes. It's not the bombs that matter; it's where we deploy the bombs. He goes, we're bombing terrorists. Do civilians get killed by Syrian bombs? I'm sure a ton do. I'm sure the Russians have killed tons of civilians as well. I mean, when you're bombing a country, whether the U.S., the Russians, the Syrians, but people are going to die. But the question is this: would this be happening had the United States not used U.S. foreign policy to destabilize Syria for regime change in the first place? These are the questions that people have to ask. And when you ask these questions, the answers become kind of obvious that, hey, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, the Syrians do have a right to defend their own territory. And not only that, you have Assad out there saying, we want to, basically, the Syrians can't fly, the Russians can't fly, but we'll fly. This no-fly zone. And the last time we've seen a no-fly zone, what happened? Libya, right? So they're not going to go for it. They're not going to go for it. And also, as a response, the night after, 6 warships, 3 to 4 supply ships, and the Kuznetsov carrier, I butchered the name, is on its way to the Caspian Sea. And it carries the newest of MiG-29s that the Russians also have on this aircraft carrier, which would also have the Ka-29s, or did I write Ka-52s on there? Anyway, Ka-29s are usually there, but they might have Ka-52s in there on this aircraft carrier. But it also carries the very powerful Su-33, which the Su-35 is the Air Force version. Su-33 is a slightly older Navy version. The problem with the Su-33, even though it's way more powerful than the MiG-29, it's also heavier. And they only carry air defense weapons on the Su-33, very few guided ground attack weapons for the Su-33, hence why the MiG-29s are coming in as upgrades. They're a little bit lighter, so they get off Russian aircraft carriers don't have catapults. They have a big fence, a big steel gate, and they back the jet up to that. They rev the jet up to full afterburn. They release the brakes and slingshot themselves, and they hit it's like a big ski jump right at the front of the aircraft carrier. So all their aircraft carriers kind of slope up at the front. And these Su-33s have enough power to get off that way, but they can't do it with heavy ground attack ordnance. The MiG-29s, they have ordnance that are ground attack friendly, so to speak, if you could say ground attack friendly, that will be able to get off the deck for more ground attack missions. So they got a little more versatility out of these newer MiG-29s that are going on there. These are the naval MiG-29. So that's definitely a step up in escalation when that is in the region. They also, these new weapons, we'll have to see how they work out. It was Saman Mountain where the 30 NATO guys. This comes out of Sputnik News. Russia had no comment. Same with South Front. Russia had no comment. So it was Saman Mountain, Suman. Again, butchering the name in Syria there, where the 30 NATO commanders were, intelligence command headquarters was hit, that type of thing, whatever that building was that killed those. So again, the details keep coming up. And why it was such a devastating thing is because the lack of coverage, right? So, So like Assad said, how did ISIS know when to attack? So they obviously were given the tips on that. Moving down. Obama is working on a UN gun grab to take away the Second Amendment with the United Nations ATT. Apparently he's going to try to ratify that. I don't know how that's going to work out. Again, that kind of goes on the domestic front. Now, over there in Russia, Comrade Putin is basically looking to revive the KGB. So we know he's been kind of taking a lot of protégés under his wing. So there is a new Russia coming up. Right now, Russia has no replacement for Putin. They just went through a mid-election. It was like a landslide for Putin. So people either didn't vote because like, well, there's no point in voting, it's rigged, or it was to the point where, again, there's nobody who's got the charm, the charisma, and the James Bondish supervillain look like, or the strongman look, or whatever, that Putin has. They just don't have a replacement for him. So Putin is, molding guys, younger guys, in his image. So Putin is looking to basically here is start a new era of the Russian Federation with new blood. We also know his purge of the military, not as drastic as Obama. He's looking for, he's going for yes men as well that will respond to NATO without hesitation, which again is a dangerous thing as well. Unlike Obama, where he's just looking for guys to follow orders and not question anything, just to go along with the, regime change policy. Putin is looking for people who will defend hardcore, no hesitation, which again is the scary part because these guys can tend to be very robotic in that sense, very loyalist, which is good to a degree, but in these times, it's like it might their patriotism might trump their actual rationality, which I don't think it will, but you never know. It's just something to keep in mind. So India and Pakistan have been shooting at each other all week there, in Kashmir, over Kashmir. They flare up from time to time. The problem with Pakistan and India is it's two nuclear powers that hate each other with a mad passion. So we'll, keep an eye on that too. But a couple of times a year, same with India and China, they usually have border excursions shooting at each other a couple of times a year. This one, again, you've heard me say it several times. We arm the people we fight in the future. Now, if you're a U.S. Soldier, again, this is why the recruitment is so low, and I covered it in the last one, where they're getting the National Guard in the States, they're getting them ready to fight overseas, because they just don't have enough guys showing up. With the transgendered issue, with the feminism in the military, it's just not working for people signing up to the military. Now, if you're over there fighting with the Kurdish coalition forces, and this is what I've been worried about for my fellow Canadian soldiers, this is already happening to the U.S. troops, the Turks are shooting at the Americans that are fighting alongside the Kurds. What could possibly go around? A NATO country shooting at another NATO country. So the UN Resolution 2254 was sabotaged by Syria, so basically it won't go through because that was the ceasefire. It already got the United States. I think what they did, we call them U.S. central bankers, whatever you want to refer to them, the Zionists, whatever. What they did is they made sure that a coalition cannot happen between Russia or the U.S. or the other participants to fight ISIS, because again, ISIS is, or whichever rebel group you pick, is the proxy army to overthrow Assad. It's that serious. As of yesterday, I believe, the UK scrambled 2 Typhoon fighters to escort a Tu-160 west of the Shetland Islands. So, so again, the saber rattling's going. The Russians are going to let you know they're there. This is, again, it's just escalation. It's just escalation. Rothschild, Lord Rothschild, basically, I think they just bought another Hirschfield in Chicago. They bought that. So again, more one world dominance. It's getting back to the other thing. It's the Foreign Operations Center was what hit, where those 30 intelligence officers were hit by the Russians and the Syrians. So Lord Rothschild, he's been talking about this for a good while now. Economic nuclear winter. This comes from Jacob Rothschild, who's buying gold. George Soros is buying gold. Jim Rickers, Jim Rogers, the whole list of them. They're all buying gold, and they're telling their guys to buy gold. So, Now, the Armenian army is also in, I'm probably going to butcher it again, Takachu A's and Scud B's and Iskander M's. They had a big parade going through a couple of days ago. So these things are moving into Armenia. So Armenia basically is going to be the first line. It's going to be the front line for if Russia and Turkey go to war. Armenia is going to take the brunt of it, that type of thing. So it's just the idea that these powerful weapons, Scud launchers are not known as, like the Scud Bs, that's what Saddam had. They're still dangerous. I mean, one lands in your area, you're going to die, you know what I mean? World War I equipment is still dangerous, you know what I mean? That type of thing. It's just the only difference between World War I and now is the booms are bigger. I mean, if you watched, and some of you have seen it probably by now, the big military drill that the 12,500 man military drill that the Russians just put on, they're practice bombs, okay? Leave mushroom clouds. You know, they're big, like when you watch them storm the beach and stuff like that, and you see the Su-27s and 34s coming over the beach with the frog foots and all that, and then you got the warships over here, and you got the tank, you know, the landing craft, and you know all these BRDMs and all that coming up onto the shore. You see these mushroom clouds of fire, and then rocket attacks and all that stuff. And it's like when you look at like the TOS-1, I mean that thing is just such a nightmare of a machine. Why use motor around when you could take out 8 city blocks with T-72 chassis with 24 rocket? You know, it make big boom, thermobaric rocket, it melt everything. Yeah, you have glass factory after. Yeah, it's like these weapons are just. And imagine, like I've seen some footage in Syria where it's like you see the 3 TOS flamethrowers sitting there in battery firing. You know, like. The Katyusha rockets of World War II must have been something severe, I'm sure, you know, but these TOSs are just like, it's like if you were to take the Hulk, okay, take a Katyusha rocket, turn it into the Hulk, and then put it on steroids, you would have a TOS. You know, those things, and you watch them, they fire, and you wait about a minute or two, and then the rockets hit the area. They're powerful enough where they can't fire these rockets any closer than 400 meters from their targets, or they'll take themselves out. They can take out 8 city blocks with 24 rockets. 80 millimeters. That's it. They're maybe 5 feet long, 6 feet long, whatever they are. 8 feet long max. 8 city blocks, and that's the weak stuff. That's the weak stuff. It's insane. Yeah, that's insane. But yeah, Rothschilds, and here's what kills me about Jacob Rothschild. Is he comes out there and says, "Oh, the banks are crooked. The banks are doing this," and he owns them. Him and his family own them. And you know. But that's how these libertine types live. They blame everybody else. It's like Obama. Have you ever heard Obama accept responsibility for anything he's done without blaming somebody else? Again, they're psychopaths. You know, Jacob Rothschild, that they're saying, okay, yeah, there's going to be an economic nuclear winter, so to speak. In other words, and other people have been calling out of the IMF and Goldman Sachs and all that, saying that, yeah, we haven't seen the devastation of the third level of depression that we're entering into. So this is coming from the people who created it. And of course, if you were betting against the Fed, and you know, yes, you probably made a ton of cash off of the Federal Reserve is never going to do. They want to raise hikes 0.25%. The Federal Reserve in the States want to raise a quarter. They can't even do that. You know, it's that fragile that if they were to do that, they could trigger a global economic collapse. And that's not an exaggeration. So they keep saying, oh, yeah, we're going to raise rates, we're going to raise rates. They're not. They're never going to raise rates. They can't. They do, the game's over. On their watch. That's the thing. What they're trying to do is make sure it doesn't happen on their watch, right? Egypt, okay, praises Donald Trump. Donald Trump and trashes Hillary Clinton. So Donald Trump is out there, you know, they're giving him praise and stuff like that. Yeah. B-1 Lancers are basically buzzing the coast of North Korea, and, you know, flying around South Korea. So, yeah, again, with the they're getting ready for a 6th nuclear test over there in North Korea. I don't think North Korea is a threat to the world. It is. It really is. Even if it gets 1 or 2 ballistic missiles, it'll be a threat to somebody's city, but not to the world. I think where North Korea becomes the threat is more to regional, like South Korea, obviously. Taiwan, Japan, you know, Philippines, whoever else is in the region that they might go after. But their main target for North Korea is South Korea. There's really, like, their artillery guns ain't going to get us. They have very few nukes. It takes them too long to put them together. But they are getting more missiles and stuff like that. Now, the missile technology is probably Chinese for the most part. Yes, the Chinese is the proxy puppet to North Korea is the proxy puppet to China. Now, all this stuff that we're seeing of North Korea saber-rattling too is usually a response to U.S. drills with South Korea. Again, South Korea, I'm not against the U.S. and South Korea doing drills, but I'm like, wouldn't it be better to kind of do it away from North Korea, away from South Korea, like take the soldiers, move them somewhere else, practice them up that way, fine. But just, let things calm down before you do these drills. These constant drills, it provokes North Korea. And I don't think the North Koreans respond on cue. I think they respond on cue of the Chinese saying, go ahead, yeah, light off a missile or two to keep them occupied. Because the idea is that it takes the focus off of China, right? And the Chinese, they try to stay as covert as possible. It's a better strategy for them. Now, that said, they're saying a lot of the North Korean missiles look awfully lot like, particularly the submarine launch stuff, looks awfully a lot like the Chinese-made stuff. And we had the Russians saying that they were impressed and terrified at the same time that North Korea was actually able to fire, a submarine-launched weapon, missile, and that landed into the sea, the Sea of Japan there, and it went into their identification zone. So this was a 500-kilometer or 300-mile range missile. That could be devastating, especially in that region of the world. There's so many islands. You could have a North Korean sub just sitting waiting in ambush. Like I say, the hunter-killer packs of World War II tactics still work today. The most advanced warships can get ambushed. Depends on the sub commander. If they're sitting there with the torpedo doors already open, waiting, you get into a kill box. There'll be no counter for 4 or 6 torpedoes coming at you at once. There'll just be no way to maneuver a warship. And even if they lose a sub per, the North Koreans have the most submarines in the world. They might not be the highest quality submarines, but that's still, I think the North Koreans, should a war break out with China and the United States, the North Koreans go to work on commercial shipping, supply ships. They definitely would be devastating against that. Harbors, that type of thing. They would, the limitations that the North Korean subs have, their newest subs are it's a domestic sub, but it looks like a Kylo class sub. Those things might be good enough to take out a warship or two. Submarines just have natural stealth on their side. Again, they could lock down that waterway pretty fast, even with U.S. warships in there, because the missile, what the submarines will do is kind of, be gate guards more or less, rather than out in the open ocean patrolling. The coastlines are protected by missiles. Even Google, for some reason, Google is hiding, the Chinese buildups on the islands. They're blocking. Apparently, they're blocking out the missiles and stuff like that. I don't know why they're doing that, but they're doing that. And we know the Chinese, again, they're going to fight an island hopping war. They're going to have missile systems that some of their Dongfang missiles, like the Dongfang 11, the Dongfang 21, the Dongfang 31, the Dongfang 41. These things have 1,500-mile ranges. The warships will be sitting ducks if they're anywhere amongst the South China Sea. I think the Chinese will probably conquer right up to Guam and as far as Australia. Not overnight, but they would make it that far. There's nobody in the region that can really take the Chinese. Even with U.S. help, you have to understand, the U.S. help on one end, the United States, okay, this is how many fronts they have to. They have to cover, in a World War III, all-out World War III scenario, which would go to, they have to cover the South China Sea and China, okay, which is big enough. They have to cover Russia, okay, which is big enough. Russia and China takes up all of NATO. Russia can take on all of NATO, including the United States. They can match them man for man. Add in the Chinese on that, now you've got to divide the U.S. into 2 groups. They're outnumbered. The Russians already have a 4 million man army. The Chinese is nobody really knows what they have. Do they have a 1 million man, 4 million man, or 200 million man army? Nobody. It depends how you add these guys up. If you add up their security forces, their jungle forces, the guys that are not necessarily military but branches, again, it's like 200 million men. And then, of course, they could have up to 700 million man reservist army if they draft people. So, the numbers, plus they're working with the Russians. So, it's the United States and NATO will be spread so thin fighting Russia and China, plus the Iranians come in on it. And of course, the Syrians are already on, that side of the Iranians. And then, of course, whoever else is going, and there are countries that are starting to side with Russia and China on these things. It's only a matter, in the Philippines, you can't rely on them right now. The guy over there in the Philippines, I think so far he's killed, if you're thinking of visiting the Philippines or something, be very careful, because this guy is a zero tolerance guy. If you are a drug dealer, they've already killed 3,000 drug dealers. I don't know if he's Islamic or not, but he's been basically telling the U.S. get out of the. We don't want F-16s and get out of. We don't want F-16s to fight drug cartels, and we don't want the U.S. He doesn't like the U.S. Clearly, he doesn't like Obama at all. So there will be regime change in Philippines. There's no doubt about that. They're going to have to take this guy out. Plus, he's probably killing, like the CIA agents and stuff like that, running drugs and stuff like that. Because the CIA runs drugs all over the world. That's how they fund their projects, right? The same problem you have in South America. So the DEA and all them, they're in South America, but all these alphabet organizations are really criminal at the end of the day that the United States has. But even them, they can't take on, they're not going to take on the Philippine military, So they have to do regime change through color revolution, like they're trying to do in Venezuela. And again, in Venezuela, they're it's pretty bad down there. $150 for a loaf of bread. So, and that cost is only going to go up. So I talked about the $1.15 billion going to Saudi Arabia. Mind you, have 94 million people out of work in the States, but we're going to give that much money to the Saudis, or what's called do trades with the Saudis. They give them money and then they get them to buy weapons. Like it's the war's a racket, I guess. Yeah. So. The other thing is, Assad was asking, who are the witnesses? Who are the white helmets and stuff like that? And when people start looking into that, again, the United States hasn't really provided proof that Assad and Russia struck the UN convoy, that type of thing. And the coincidence of ISIS just happened to be lucky enough again to be in the right place at the right time to take back, after the airstrike against the Syrian army, right? So again, that's A-10s and F-16s in there for an hour. I don't know what I wrote there. So I'm going to get back to what was that last part? Okay. So anyway, the case here is that we have a lot of, we're never going to know the truth. It's this side accusing that side. But what we do have that we can nail down is that intelligence officers were killed on both sides of the conflict. It's iced tea if you're wondering, not Pepsi. I haven't had a Pepsi in a good while now, which is good. But anyway, the thing is that we could see the escalation now is getting pretty high, pretty hot. I did listen to John Kerry. Basically what he's saying is that we're going to have this ceasefire, we're going to have a no-fly zone, we're going to do our thing, we're going to break Syria up into, what we want Syria to be, and you just go along with us. And if you're not, well, you're the bad guys, that type of thing. And the Syrian army and the Syrian Air Force don't have a right to basically, defend their own country. That's basically what he's saying. If we were to tell the U.S. that, okay, well, you know what, you got Russian jets flying over your country, bombing terrorists. Okay, well, the Russians are going to tell the United States, okay, well, you know what? Don't you send out your Air Force to bomb terrorists because we'll do it. What do you think the response is going to be? I mean, I know it sounds like a ridiculous scenario, but it is. It is. You're telling the Syrian army that they cannot fight the ISIS guys because you might hit our moderate rebels. But if they're in together, the moderate rebels are always side by side with these ISIS guys. And Al-Sham, Al-Nusra, which is formerly Al-Qaeda. So and this agreement was like, okay, well, you can hit Al-Qaeda, you can hit Al-Nusra and ISIS, and you can hit, I think, one or two other guys. Everybody else is ours, so to speak, but not officially. That's what the Russians have been doing. Tell us who your guys are, and they can't because every one of them gets linked as a terrorist group. Again, this is why they took the Al-Qaeda off the terrorist watch list in the States, because they can't, because when it comes out that, and again, you might as well say, even if you don't even really have to read between the lines too much on this, with what John Kerry was saying, but basically he's like, they're our guys. You're hitting our guys. Our guys are intertwined with them. You're hitting our guys. So you're arming ISIS. So basically what he's saying is you're hitting our proxy army to overthrow Assad. The goal is to overthrow Assad. Ends justify the means. This is something, a Machiavellian thing that Assad was talking about. He goes, with the West, he says, the ends justifies the means. They'll kill anybody, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he's basically saying they're going to kill anybody just to get the job done. So the ends justify the means. He goes, in Syria, he says, the Assyrian army isn't working that way. He says, no, we are about to take back Syria. Don't kid yourself. He says the conflict is going to go on a lot longer, but again, it's going to go on for years, but they are taking it back. And as I said, as Syria stabilizes, the regions around Saudi Arabia, Turkey and all that are going to be destabilized, and Europe, because the so-called refugees coming in. Now, a lot of them are not even coming in from Syria, that's true. And as far as people going back to Syria, well, here's the thing that Assad was saying. He says, yes, he says, I have no doubt people are going to be coming back here. That's going to take a long time, but yeah, but he says, Syria, he said it, this is like the third time he said it. Yeah, no, we're, the Syrian army, Arab army is kicking ass with Hezbollah and Iran and the Russians. And yeah, like was it Reuters or which one was it? Anyway, it was one of the propaganda machines for like the Clintons and stuff like that. Associated Press, I think it was the interview with Assad, and it was sitting there. Like you could tell this guy's like trying to throw all the the hype at him, and like Assad goes through it like because he knows it's bullshit, so he's not going to defend himself in the sense, oh no, we didn't do it. No, well, no, think about it. Like he always, and it's true when you think about it. It's like, okay, on one end, we're going to be giving people medical thing and then bomb hospitals. No, is it? If we did that, people wouldn't. It goes a 5-year war. I'm in power because people back them, and he goes, they're not really backing me. He goes, they're backing Syria, and it does make sense. If Assad was what the West made him out to be. Again, I'm not saying he's a good guy. He has to run the country with an iron fist, or to look, even without U.S. intervention, if he was soft in his country, it would look the way it is now. They have to run it with an iron fist. Every Middle Eastern, Jordan, you go to Jordan, yeah, you insult the king of Jordan, see what happens. Yeah, try to do an uprising in Jordan, see what happens. And that's considered one of the safe countries. Do that in Saudi Arabia, see what happens to you. Try that in Turkey, see what happens. Look what Erdogan's doing there, trying to make the rise of the new Ottoman Empire. Like it's ridiculous, But that said, like he said, it goes. It's the people don't support me; they support Syria. The army supports Syria. I support them. That's why he's in power. He goes, if I was going against my people and bombing the shitballs out, they would overthrow them. They would lynch them. And yes, there is footage out there of Assad out there in Aleppo and stuff like that around his people. This guy's moving amongst his people. Trust me, if the people hated him, he'd be taken out so quickly. It wouldn't be funny. He wouldn't be able to do that. So he's out there. I'm not saying all the Syrian people love him. They're in a rock and a hard place. They don't have a better choice. Like, who runs against Assad? That's a better choice. What, an ISIS leader? We already seen what happened to Iran, in the overthrow of the Shah back in the 1970s because of the creation of Al-Qaeda and all that. The Muslim Brotherhood. This all goes back. It's all orchestrated. This is all. Everything we're seeing now is not by accident. It is a part of the Greater Israel Project. It goes back even further than that. It goes back. The Muslim Brotherhood's like 1929, 1920s, early 1930s. Al Qaeda comes in the 1960s, which of course, state backed, and then of course the Mujahideen with Zbigniew Brzezinski, to fight the Russians in Afghanistan. And then, of course, the Shah being overthrown in, in Iran. I mean, Iran, the women used to walk around in like tank tops and stuff like that. Now they're, now it's a little bit stricter there. You know what I mean? So all this stuff comes in usually again, and we end up arming the people we fight in the future. There should be, if the United Nations Small Arms Trade Treaty deal was to take place, there should be no U.S. weapons going into the Middle East. Period. There should not be any arming of this side or that side. Again, we arm the Kurds today, we fight them tomorrow. We arm Turkey today, we fight them tomorrow. We arm ISIS today, we fight them tomorrow. Now that said, do they from time to time strike the ISIS targets? Yeah, the ones that are not actually in compliance. And not all the ISIS fighters and rebels are actually in on what's going on, which is very clear. But you got your guys like al-Baghdadi, they're using the guys to basically guide them, again, call it the biggest cattle rustling, project going on where they're just keeping, the Kurds are there to keep the ISIS from getting out of Syria. The idea of going into, which the United States will be going to war in Libya very soon, to keep ISIS fighting Assad. That's what they want. Until there's either no ISIS guys left, which, that's inexhaustible to a degree. The thing is these guys are going to be repelled at the walls pretty soon, by the Syrians, because the Syrians, again, they're they're going to win in the long run. They're going to win in the long run, especially if they have Russia at their back, and especially if they're starting to get the new Russian weapons coming in. But anyway, the last thing, this one I think is really important, is Syria and Russia, after this airstrike, this is part of the escalation, have now said any airstrikes held against the Syrian army or Russian positions will be met with force. Basically, they will shoot down, whether it's a U.S. jet, whether it's an Australian or a Canadian jet, they will shoot down Turkish jets, whatever, anything that attacks their guys. They're not going to put up with it anymore. Huge escalation right there, because the first U.S. jet that gets shot down, or coalition jet that gets shot down, really takes up the game. But the Russians have come out and the Syrians have come out and said that we're now going to shoot down. They're going to start using these S-300 missile systems. And somebody showed me some. I didn't get to see the whole link, but like the Israelis sending their, the Russians sending their crappy stuff into Syria. The Israelis couldn't stop it, like drones or whatever. The Israelis send their state-of-the-art drones that get shot down by 1960s. What you call it? S-200 missile system. So that type of thing. But the S-300 missile systems, those things, the ones in Iran can umbrella Syria as well as the ones, and mind you, the Saudis have them too, so it's kind of weird that the Russians, they do, well, the Russians do business wherever they make money, right? So, but anyway, I'm going to have to leave it at about that. So anyway, if you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation to the channel. Thank you so much to everybody who has. Don't forget to say your piece on what you'd like to see done with the money. We're at $1,100 and some odd dollars there now. Again, thanks, guys. So say your piece of what you'd like to see that money spent on for the channel. Next to that, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like, between yourself, between others, always do the right thing, and have yourselves a great day. G'day, hi, and welcome. You guys like those drive-by g'day, hi, and welcomes. So I thought I'd do that. All right, good morning to everybody here. And, sorry, bear with me. Trash in the place. Wasn't trying to. It is chilly this morning. The sun warmed me up. It's not quite 0 yet, but pretty darn close. I'm going to check my motorcycle battery today. All right, so never any shortage of any craziness going on everywhere going on right now. Okay, I guess I'll start on this side. So obviously Syria is right now the big thing, and you got George Soros's white helmets in there. I don't trust them at all. Not necessarily. See, the United Nations, the white helmets, organizations like that. Okay, the people that work within it, most of these people are compartmentalized and don't really understand what the bigger agenda is. With the white helmets, what they are is aid workers, the majority. But what people don't understand is they're political. They are political. These people, okay, they're anti-Assad. They're not going in there. You see this with Doctors Without Borders, like the real Doctors Without Borders. They go into, they don't take sides. If there's an ISIS guy lying on the ground or a Syrian soldier lying on the ground, they'll help both of them. That type of thing. The thing with these white helmets, it is made up of people that, help people out, whatever, that type of thing. So there are good people in there, there's no doubt about that. But the organization is a George Soros-funded organization. So right there, that tells you it is not going to be open, transparent, and honest. Same with the United Nations. The United Nations, there are good people that work in the United Nations, but the United Nations as an organization is corrupt to the core. Because of who runs it. Again, Rockefeller, Rothschild, Soros, Kissinger, Brzezinski. These guys are all in there. Brzezinski doesn't really run the UN or anything like that, but they're puppeteers that are in there. And, you can look at these organizations and anything that comes out of there, you got to take with a grain of salt because it's political, right? So anyway, I'm going to, you've seen this on RT. There's a 10-year-old girl from Yemen, basically, or not Yemen, but in Saudi Arabia, basically asking the U.S. to stop selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia, this comes on the heels, of course, of Saudi Arabia just getting $1.15 billion in military aid from the United States. Again, why would we be selling anything to these countries? Any Middle Eastern country, let alone Saudi Arabia, including Israel. Why would we be selling weapons to these areas? It's an unstable area of the world. You don't give them powerful weapons. So I don't know how many new Abrams tanks. I think what's happening is because so many Abrams tanks got blown up by the Houthis, that the U.S. is, I heard something like 130 new units, Abrams tanks going into, they're going to basically give those to the Saudis or sell those to the Saudis and in turn I guess replenish some of the losses that they've taken. One thing about the Saudi military is it's I don't know how good they really are, but as a whole, they're not very good. They got phenomenal weaponry, but they don't really they're not really like a professional army. So they got this weaponry, but they don't have the know-how, so to speak, and that's why you see such devastation. And the military ranks don't seem to be all that consistent and reliable when it comes to the Saudis. They tend to give up easy. They tend to, they tend to flip-flop a bit. So I could see definitely Saudi Arabia, their troubles are just beginning, really. They are being thrown under the bus. Remember, in 2012, they said they were going to sell oil outside the U.S. dollar by the year 2022, roughly, or to 2025. So, in other words, they pulled a Saddam Hussein and a Muammar Gaddafi. Selling your resources outside the U.S. petrodollar is basically a death sentence. They'll go to war with you almost instantaneously. Saddam Hussein, I think it was 4 days after. So, you know what I mean? So it's like, so if you think there's a free and open, transparent markets out there, that tells you no. But anyway, over there to the UK, yes, we are going to have Will and Kate come to Canada again. I think they're going to be here this week or whatever. I don't mind Will and Kate that much. The problem I have is every time they visit is how much does it cost the taxpayers? Like that stuff we can't afford. Never mind Justin Trudeau's moving expenses for his buddies there. Something like $270,000 to move like 3 people. To Ottawa. Again, too many liberals are entitled to their entitlements, right? Too many entitlements and stuff like that. And I look at something like this. This is why I think Canada should become way more nationalist. And again, we don't have to get rid of our history. We have a proud history with Great Britain. There's no doubt about that. But we can't really afford the Queen or the monarchy and stuff like that. We just can't afford that. If they want to come here, more than happy to have them. Just pay your own way. That's what we're saying. Like this idea that we're rolling out the red carpet. The red carpet just costs us too much at a time when, remember, Canada spends 400% of GDP. That's what our debt is, 400% of GDP. The United States is like 360. However, the United States still has further to fall. But that said, we simply cannot, we're spending too much, and we're not spending it on the right things. I mean, there's healthcare issues, there's vets homeless vets out there, there's natives without running water. I think Will and Kate can wait, you know what I mean? That type of thing. But anyway, back to the UK. 180 nuclear convoy incidents since 2000. They do this, they move these, remember I covered this before, and I didn't know this, and then a bunch of people from Scotland and stuff like that started telling me, no, this is a normal occurrence, it happens every couple of months. Stuff like that. But again, if you watch some of my older World War III updates, it gives you a running tally of what's going on in the world and why it goes on. But anyway, they do about around 6 trips a year, and they take these warheads from one area to another, and basically they maintain the warheads and then they bring them back, which I don't understand why they don't just do it on site. Why would you have to move these things around? It doesn't make sense to me, but I'm sure there's a reason that they do it. And they cover about 9,000 miles in I guess in all 3 trips or whatever. Or all 6 trips. So that's, they're moving these things quite far. And there's security issues. I mean, if the convoy is ever attacked, again, it wouldn't take much to steal a warhead, you know what I mean? They've had trucks break down, overheated, they've had all kinds of issues like that. So really, it's a bad setup that they got. There's no reason to be moving warheads around, period. Plus, they're moving through people's neighborhoods. You picture the best perfect disaster you could get. A truck carrying nuclear warheads gets smashed on a train track, catches fire with that's carrying benzene. Everything's burning, so you got nuclear benzene, environmental disaster. So again, why are we moving these things around? The worst creation of mankind has got to be nuclear power. I know there are people out there that that nuclear weapons are not the same as nuclear power. Yes, nuclear power, one of the safest things we got going. But when it goes wrong, it's so devastating. Like, there is no such thing as a minor nuclear incident. That's what we have to